Every Friday, the scarred biker brought $1 to an account belonging to a dead man. Then the teller found a forgotten beneficiary code. Who was the dollar really for? You signed that no records were missing. He slid forward the old receipt. Then sign this. It has to post before Friday ends, the biker said as the closing alarm chirped and Lydia's metal stamp tray slipped from the counter, striking the marble floor. Lydia Fenner caught it before it spun under the counter, her breath shortening when the terminal clock flashed 11:38 p.m. Across the glass, the scarred man pushed forward one worn dollar bill, one green cloth passbook, and a deposit slip marked with a single number. 1. The air smelled of lemon polish, overheated wiring, and bitter coffee. Harlan Rivet. Kessler stood beneath the white ceiling lights in an oil-marked leather jacket, his broad shoulders filling the space between two velvet ropes. He looked built for confrontation, yet his left hand trembled as he flattened the bill with two thick fingers. Lydia looked from the money to the closing notice on her screen. "The counter is locked," she said. "The conversion began 8 minutes ago. I cannot promise this will clear tonight." Harlan did not raise his voice. He turned the passbook so the faded account number faced her and said, "Then don't promise. Just try." Behind Lydia, 3 warning boxes blinked across the terminal. Legacy file, death record match, restricted migration queue. The last carried a countdown of 22 minutes. Benton Crowell stepped from the glass office, straightening the cuff of his gray suit. "That account was matched to a death record less than an hour ago," he said. "At midnight, teller access ends unless an unresolved beneficiary record is formally preserved." Harlan's eyes stayed on Lydia. "I'm not here to take anything." Benton stopped beside the counter. "Then why are you depositing into it?" Harlan slid the green passbook another inch beneath the glass. Its cloth cover was darkened at the corners by grease and rain, and the paper inside smelled like an old desk drawer. Lydia opened it. The first page showed a balance too small to interest a thief. The next showed line after line of identical entries. $1. Friday. $1. Friday. Some stamps were blue, some black, some nearly faded, but the pattern continued for years. Lydia counted 6 pages before Benton reached over and closed the book with 2 fingers. "This proves repeated deposits," he said. "It does not prove ownership." "I never said it did," Harlan replied. The answer left the room quieter. At 11:41, the overhead lights dimmed as the remote team shut down another server. A dry electronic tone sounded, and a red banner replaced the account screen. "Account owner deceased. Teller access ends at midnight." Benton pointed toward the shuttered entrance. "You need to leave." Harlan looked at the clock, then at the dollar under the glass. "Not until Friday is finished." Lydia placed her hand over the bill before Benton could pull it back. She should have refused the transaction. Instead, she entered the account number manually. The system paused for 4 seconds, then produced a code she had never seen. "Beneficiary reconciliation required." Benton's expression changed. Only slightly. Harlan noticed. Benton's hand remained on the closed passbook while the red code pulsed against the white terminal screen. The marble counter reflected his silver cuff links, Lydia's pale fingers, and the black crescent of grease beneath Harlan's thumbnail with the clean precision of a display case. Nothing in the room seemed designed for a man like him. "That code does not create legal authority," Benton said. Harlan looked at the hand covering the book. "I didn't ask it to." At 11:43 p.m., another row of ceiling lights clicked off, leaving the annex divided into bright islands and dark glass. Outside the lowered security shutters, Harlan's motorcycle sat under a parking lot lamp, rainwater shining along its fuel tank, while inside, the air remained warm and dry enough to carry the sharp scent of citrus cleaner, printer toner, and coffee burned down to its last bitter inch. The security officer shifted near the velvet ropes. Harlan heard it. He stepped back from the counter before anyone asked him to. Benton noticed the movement, but not the reason behind it. "Mr. Kessler, your presence here does not establish a claim," he said. "You are not listed as an owner, trustee, executor, or beneficiary. You have no signature authority. You cannot direct the bank to preserve this account." Each sentence landed neatly. Each one was true. Harlan lowered his eyes to the dollar beneath Lydia's hand. I know. The answer unsettled her more than an argument would have. Lydia reopened the passbook and turned to the earliest visible entry. The date was 17 years old. $1 had been deposited at 4:12 p.m. on a Friday. The next entry came 7 days later, then another, each amount identical, even when the ink changed from violet to navy and the branch stamp changed shape. She moved forward several pages. Holidays had shifted the times, storms had smudged the paper, and one deposit had been recorded at 11:54 p.m., but the weekday never changed. Friday. Always Friday. How many years? She asked. Harlan did not answer immediately. The terminal timer dropped from 17 minutes to 16. Long enough, he said. Benton gave a controlled breath. A repeated deposit does not prevent closure when a registered owner is deceased. Lydia studied the balance. It was modest, almost painfully so. No large transfer waited behind the ritual. No hidden fortune large enough to explain a scheme. No sudden increase suggesting manipulation. Just years of $1 entries building beside ordinary interest credits measured in cents. Have you ever withdrawn from this account? She asked. No requested statements. No, asked to be added. No, Benton's expression tightened. Then what exactly are you trying to preserve? Harlan's scar pulled faintly as his jaw set. He glanced through the glass wall toward the silent conference room, where white chairs stood evenly spaced around a table no one would use again after midnight. His leather jacket carried the smell of cold rain and machine oil into a room, scented to erase every human trace. A place, he said. Lydia waited. For what? Harlan's eyes returned to the green book. For someone who never came back. The security officer stopped shifting. Even Benton went still. Lydia turned the passbook toward the light and examined the faded code near the binding. Beneath it, nearly hidden by the fold, were 3 stamped initials and a sequence beginning with the letters BR. She typed the sequence into the legacy search field. The system rejected it. She tried again with the branch prefix. This time, a narrow gray message appeared. Paper record not digitized. Benton reached toward the keyboard. Close that window. Lydia kept her hands where they were. Why? Because the conversion protocol does not require us to investigate unsupported paper references after cutoff. Cutoff is midnight. Operational cutoff was 11:30. Harlan looked at the clock. 11:46. Lydia looked at the closed archive door beyond Benton's office, then at the spotless marble floor between them, a distance of perhaps 30 feet that suddenly felt larger than the entire bank. Who was the owner to you? She asked. Harlan's gaze hardened, not with anger, but with the effort of holding something in place. Edwin Caro was my stepfather. Benton's fingers paused above the keyboard. Lydia asked the next question softly. And who never came back? Harlan looked at the dollar bill. His daughter. The name seemed to alter the temperature of the room. Lydia's terminal fan whispered behind the glass. The polished floor held every reflection without mercy, and the brushed steel clock above Benton's office advanced to 11:47 p.m. Harlan stood beneath it with rain darkening the shoulders of his jacket. Her name is Ruth Caro, he said. Benton folded his arms. If she is Edwin Caro's daughter, she should have handled the estate through the proper process. She never knew about the account. Then how do you know? Harlan looked at the archive door rather than at him. Because Edwin told me. Lydia entered Ruth's name into the legacy customer search. The new system returned no active profile, no verified address, and no surviving beneficiary record. A second database produced 3 former addresses, all more than a decade old. The clean blue boxes on the screen made the absence look orderly. Harlan's passbook did not. Its pages were soft from handling, its corners stained by garages, winters, and 17 years of waiting in fluorescent lines. Lydia turned to the first deposit after Edwin's death. This entry was made 12 days after the account owner passed away. Harlan nodded. He asked me before that. Asked you to deposit $1 every Friday. He asked me not to let the bank forget Ruth. Benton gave a quiet, humorless shake of his head. Banks do not remember people through symbolic deposits. They maintain accounts through documentation. Harlan met his eyes. Then, find the documentation. The words were level. They still struck harder than anger. At 11:48, a printer near the empty reception desk awakened and expelled a single conversion report. Its gears sounded unnaturally loud in the marble annex. Lydia crossed the floor to retrieve it, her low heels clicking where Harlan's wet boots had left dull marks on the otherwise flawless surface. The report listed 43 legacy accounts scheduled for restricted migration and unclaimed property review. Edwin Caro appeared at number 38. Status: owner deceased. Beneficiary: none confirmed. Exception: none recorded. Lydia looked back at the message, still open on her terminal. Paper record not digitized. The report says there is no exception, she said. The legacy screen says there is an unresolved paper record. Benton took the report from her. The paper reference could be obsolete, duplicated, or attached in error. We cannot delay a branch-wide conversion because an old code survived in one passbook. How much delay? Harlan asked. That is not your concern. How much? Lydia checked the timer. 11 minutes remained before the final migration lock. A manual reconciliation hold would pause only this account, she said. For 5 minutes. No longer. Benton's gaze sharpened and placed the entire exception under the employee who initiates it. The warning was meant for Lydia. Harlan heard it. He reached beneath the glass and slowly drew the dollar bill toward himself. Don't risk your job, he said. Lydia kept 2 fingers on the opposite edge. The bill stretched flat between them, green and worn, worth less than the coffee cooling behind her terminal. Around it stood marble worth thousands, glass polished to invisibility, and screens capable of moving fortunes without anyone touching paper. Neither of them released the dollar. Why did Ruth leave? Lydia asked. Harlan's fingers tightened. Benton looked toward the clock. The security officer looked away. Because Edwin chose silence when she needed him to speak, Harlan said. Lydia waited. Harlan's eyes remained on the bill, and I helped him stay silent. The terminal chimed. 9 minutes remained. The admissions settled between the white counters and the darkened windows, too human for a room built to reduce every problem to a field, a code, and a signature. Lydia released the dollar, but Harlan did not pull it away. Benton watched the clock change to 11:51 p.m. What did you stay silent about? Lydia asked. Harlan rubbed his thumb along the edge of the bill. Ruth told Edwin the family business was keeping money that belonged to her mother. She wanted him to open the records. He refused. The polished lobby reflected Harlan from 3 angles, each version of him broad, scarred, and severe. None showed how small his voice had become. I told her to stop pushing, he said. Lydia's hand went still above the keyboard. You believed Edwin? I believed keeping the family together mattered more than finding out who was right. Harlan swallowed, tasting the stale coffee Benton had offered him earlier, but he had never touched. By the time I understood what silence cost, she was gone. Benton glanced at the conversion report. A family dispute does not establish a beneficiary designation. No, Harlan said, but paper does. He opened the passbook to its back cover and pressed one thick finger beneath a seam in the green cloth. The fabric lifted with a dry crackle. From the narrow pocket, he drew a folded carbon receipt, thin as onion skin and yellowed at the edges. Lydia took it carefully. The paper smelled of dust, machine oil, and the faint sweetness of old adhesive. Across the top was Edwin Caro account number. Beneath it sat the same BR sequence stamped near the passbook binding. At the bottom, under a faded branch seal, someone had written, Beneficiary card forwarded 2 records, Ruth Caro. Benton reached for the receipt. Lydia moved it beneath the glass before his fingers arrived. This is the paper reference, she said. It is not the beneficiary card itself, but it proves one was sent. It proves someone wrote that one was sent. The distinction was narrow. Benton used it like a wall. At 11:52, the air conditioning shut down and the annex became unnaturally still. Without the low mechanical hum, they could hear rain tapping the outer shutters and water ticking from Harlan's jacket on a marble that had been polished for clients who arrived in quiet cars and left without touching cash. Harlan looked toward the archive door. How far? 30 feet, Lydia said. Not the distance. The process. She understood. I need the box index, a reconciliation hold, and temporary audit access. You have none of those, Benton said. Lydia turned the carbon receipt beneath the task light. A tiny handwritten number appeared beside the branch seal. 14 C 72. She entered it into the dormant archive index. The screen loaded slowly, then displayed a single location. Basement records, cabinet C, box 72. Benton's jaw tightened. That archive is outside tonight's conversion scope. Lydia read the next line. Retention status. Active until beneficiary resolution. The security officer stepped closer, not to Harlan, but to the screen. Benton closed the conversion report and placed it flat on the counter. Even if the card exists, Mr. Kessler has no authority to request it. Harlan nodded. Then I'm not requesting it. He looked at Lydia. The bank is. The timer dropped to 7 minutes. Lydia reached for the manual hold menu. Benton stepped between her and the archive corridor. Do that, he said, and your name becomes the reason this conversion misses certification. Harlan began folding the carbon receipt along its old crease. Give it back, he said to Lydia. I won't let you lose your job for something I should have fixed years ago. Lydia looked at the spotless counters, the flawless glass, and the damp black marks his boots had left across the floor. Then she looked at the line stating that the record remained active until resolution. You are not the only person who stayed quiet too long, she said. At 11:53, she entered her employee code. Lydia's employee code appeared in a narrow white field, followed by a warning that seemed too clean for what it demanded. Initiator accepts full responsibility for delay, loss, or migration conflict. Benton stood beside her in a suit without a wrinkle, his access card resting against the reader, while Harlan waited across the glass with rain drying in dark patches on his leather and a single oil-black fingerprint marking the marble where he had steadied himself. The room had been designed to make risk invisible. Lydia pressed confirm. The screen froze for 2 seconds, then displayed a yellow bar across Edwin Caro account. Manual reconciliation hold. 5 minutes. You just attach your name to an unsupported exception, Benton said. I attached it to an active retention instruction. You attached it to a carbon copy carried by a man with no authority. Harlan folded his hands behind his back. Leave me out of it, then. Benton turned toward him. You brought this here. The bank wrote it. At 11:54 p.m., Lydia's reconciliation hold temporarily activated her audit access. She crossed the marble floor, pressed her own badge to the archive reader, and the door released with a metallic click. The sound traveled through the annex, across the empty white chairs and untouched water glasses, until even the security officer looked toward the dark corridor beyond Benton's office. She opened the door onto concrete steps smelling of dust, cardboard, and cold metal. Behind her, the polished lobby glowed like a showroom. Below, the records waited in darkness. Cabinet C stood at the foot of the stairs, its boxes already arranged in numerical order by retention code. Just under 4 minutes, Benton called. Lydia descended. Harlan remained at the counter, separated from the archive by glass, marble, policy, and 17 years of having no right to ask for anything. Benton moved to the conversion terminal and opened the certification page. 42 accounts showed green. Edwin Caro showed yellow. When the hold expires, he said, teller access ends and the account enters restricted migration without the beneficiary record attached. Harlan watched the clock. Then she has until it expires. Benton entered his supervisor credentials. I can cancel it now. Harlan's eyes dropped to the printed conversion report lying on the counter. A signature line at the bottom carried Benton's name beneath the statement. All unresolved legacy records reviewed and cleared. You already certified there were no unresolved records, Harlan said. Benton covered the report with his hand. That certification reflects the digital file. The digital file says the paper record was never scanned. It says a reference was not digitized. And your report says nothing is missing. Benton's expression hardened. The distinction he had used as a wall now stood behind him. From below came the scrape of metal drawers, then Lydia's voice calling box numbers into the silence. 70, 71, 72. The annex lights dimmed again. Harlan's reflection nearly disappeared from the black glass, leaving only the pale scar along his cheek and the green passbook under the lamp. Benton glanced at the timer. 2 minutes remained. Mr. Kessler, even if she finds a card, you receive nothing. I know. You cannot control what Ruth does with the account. I know. She may never speak to you. Harlan looked toward the archive stairs. I know that too. The simplicity of it removed every motive Benton had assigned to him. There was no claim to challenge, no profit to expose, no threat to contain. Only a man waiting for proof that belonged to someone else. At 11:56, Lydia came up the stairs carrying a gray archive box against her white blouse. Dust streaked one sleeve. The box looked almost offensive in the spotless room. She set it on the marble, opened the lid, and pulled out a paper index card stamped with Edwin Caro account number. Benton reached for it. Lydia held it beneath the task light first. A name appeared on the beneficiary line. Ruth Caro. The timer showed 63 seconds. Benton looked at the card, then at the certification report beneath his hand. Harlan unfolded the carbon receipt and placed it beside both documents. You have 2 records and 1 signature, he said quietly. Decide which one you want to stand behind. The 63 seconds seemed louder than the rain. Benton stood between the glowing terminal and the dusty archive box, one hand on his signed certification, the other hovering above the command that would send Edwin Caro account into restricted migration without a verified beneficiary. Around him, the annex remained almost painfully immaculate. White marble without a crack, glass walls without a fingerprint, silver fixtures reflecting the gray of his suit. In the center of it all lay 3 objects that did not belong there: a grease-darkened passbook, a yellow carbon receipt, and a paper card that had waited in a basement for 17 years. The card has not been verified, Benton said. Lydia read the stamped line beneath Ruth's name. It was accepted by this branch and retained under active status. Accepted by an institution that no longer exists. The institution changed its name, Harlan said. The promise on the paper didn't. Benton looked at him sharply. Harlan did not move. He kept both hands visible on the marble ledge, large enough to look threatening, still enough to prove they were not. The clock changed to 11:57 p.m. The hold timer dropped to 48 seconds. Benton turned to Lydia. Cancel the exception. Process the closure. We will refer the claimant to legal review on Monday. He is not the claimant, Lydia said. Ruth Caro is. Ruth Caro is not present. Neither is Edwin Caro, but his signature is. Benton's jaw tightened. The security officer watched from the edge of the velvet ropes, framed by a spotless wall of frosted glass. Outside, the motorcycle waited in the rain, black paint dulled by water, while inside the only thing moving was the red timer. 39 seconds. Harlan opened the passbook to the final blank line and placed the $1 bill beside it. I'm not asking you to give me the account, he said. I'm asking you to admit it belongs to someone. Benton pointed at the terminal. That system cannot preserve an account on sentiment. Then preserve it on your own paperwork. Harlan slid the certification form forward. The sentence above Benton's signature remained clear beneath the task light. All unresolved legacy records reviewed and cleared. Then Harlan placed the beneficiary card directly above it. Either this card is unresolved, he said, or your signature is wrong. Benton's face changed by less than an inch. It was enough. 28 seconds. Lydia opened the supervisor exception menu. 2 options appeared: confirm beneficiary discrepancy or proceed despite conflict. The second required Benton's personal authorization and an explanatory statement. She rotated the monitor toward him. Choose. Benton stared at the screen. The annex had been built to make clients feel that every decision was controlled, discreet, and reversible. This one was none of those things. The dusty card carried Ruth's name. The carbon receipt linked it to the passbook. The active retention code proved the file had never been resolved. And his own signature claimed otherwise. 19 seconds. Benton reached for the keyboard. If I confirm the discrepancy, the account leaves tonight's migration batch. Yes, Lydia said. If I proceed, this becomes a recorded override. Yes, and the documents are attached. All three. Harlan looked at Benton without triumph. You don't have to believe me. He nodded toward the card. Just believe what your bank kept. 12 seconds. Benton's fingers rested on the keys. For the first time that night, he looked older than Harlan. He typed 6 words into the supervisor field. Legacy beneficiary record requires formal review. Then he selected confirm beneficiary discrepancy. The red timer vanished. A yellow banner replaced it. Account preserved. Verification hold active. Lydia did not smile. She took the $1 bill, entered the amount, and pressed post. The printer drew in a narrow slip with a soft mechanical pull. At 11:57 p.m. and 49 seconds, the transaction appeared on the screen. $1. Friday. Lydia stamped the final blank line in the green passbook. The impact sounded small in the vast marble room. Harlan closed his eyes for one breath. Benton removed his hand from the certification form. No one spoke. Then Lydia noticed a telephone number written in faded blue ink on the reverse side of Ruth's beneficiary card, and beside it, a later forwarding note that had never been entered into the digital file. Lydia turned the beneficiary card over beneath the task light. The faded number had been crossed out once, then rewritten in smaller blue ink beside an address in Cedar Falls, 93 miles away. Beneath it, an employee had written, updated from return statement, postal forwarding label. The note was 11 years old. Benton stared at it, as if the handwriting had created a new problem after he had already survived the first. That information is too old to use without verification, he said. Lydia nodded. Too old to transfer funds. Not too old to begin contact. The distinction was clean. This time it belonged to her. At 12:01 a.m., the conversion screens across the annex changed from white to deep blue, and a message announced that the old branch system was no longer accepting routine transactions. The marble counters remained bright, the glass offices remained perfect, and Edwin's account remained outside the migration batch because of one dusty card and $1 posted only minutes earlier. Harlan stood outside the velvet ropes now, as if the successful deposit had returned him to the place reserved for visitors. He held the green passbook against his chest. Call the number, Lydia said. He looked at her. The bank should do it. The bank will send formal notice on Monday. Tonight, we can only confirm whether the contact information may still be valid. Benton closed the archive box. No account details can be disclosed. I'm not asking to disclose them. Lydia slid the desk phone toward Harlan. I'm asking whether Ruth Caro still answers. The handset looked delicate beside his scarred hand. He did not touch it. Through the dark glass, rain had softened to a fine mist that silvered the motorcycle's mirrors. Inside, the lemon-cleaned air had gone stale without the ventilation, carrying cardboard dust from the archive box and the mineral smell of water drying on Harlan's jacket. She won't want my voice, he said. Lydia studied him. Then she doesn't have to hear it first. She dialed the number herself. The line rang once, twice, 3 times. Benton stood beside the terminal, no longer directing the room, only witnessing it. On the 5th ring, a recorded message answered in a woman's voice. The name was not spoken, but the area code matched the address on the card. Lydia left no financial details. This message is for Ruth Caro, she said. My name is Lydia Fenner. I'm calling from the former North River branch regarding an unresolved record connected to Edwin Caro. Please contact the bank using the number on our official notice. Harlan closed his eyes at Edwin's name. Lydia ended the call. The silence afterward felt different. Not empty. Waiting. The security officer raised the shutter 6 inches to check the front entrance, allowing a strip of damp night air to slide across the marble. It carried the smell of wet pavement and gasoline, rougher and more honest than the polished room. Benton gathered the certification report, then stopped before placing it in his folder. He drew a line through the statement claiming that all records had been cleared. Beside it, he wrote, "One beneficiary exception preserved for review." He signed again. Harlan watched without comment. This does not guarantee she will respond, Benton said. I know. It does not repair what happened between you. I know. And the bank may still require months of documentation. Harlan looked down at the stamped line in the passbook. Months are easier than no chance. At 12:06, Lydia printed a beneficiary verification notice and clipped it to the archive card. The white paper looked new enough to belong in the annex. The green passbook did not. She returned it through the slot. Harlan ran one finger over the fresh stamp, then checked the transaction date printed beside it. Friday. It had posted while Friday still remained. His shoulders lowered by a fraction. At 12:08 a.m., the desk phone rang. All three of them looked at it. Lydia answered. A woman finishing an overnight shift asked why a bank she had never used was calling about her father. Lydia tightened her grip on the receiver. Harlan stood beneath the cold ceiling lights with the passbook against his chest, while Benton remained beside the dusty archive box and the corrected certification report. The marble annex reflected all three of them with perfect clarity. Ms. Caro, Lydia said, I can't discuss account details until your identity is verified, but we located an unresolved beneficiary record bearing your name. The woman on the line did not answer. A faint clatter passed through the receiver, followed by a door closing somewhere far from the bank. Edwin died 17 years ago, she finally said. Why would there still be a record? Lydia looked at the green passbook. Because the account remained active. Harlan's fingers pressed into the worn cloth cover. Ruth heard the silence. Who kept it active? Lydia could not disclose Harlan's transactions, as if they belonged to Ruth already, and she could not pretend the answer was merely procedural. The clean rules on her screen offered no sentence for what had happened. Someone made regular deposits, she said carefully. The final deposit was posted tonight. Ruth's breathing changed. How regular? Lydia looked to Harlan. He shook his head once, not asking her to hide the truth, only refusing to speak it himself. Every Friday, she said. The line went quiet again. Outside, water slid from the edge of the security shutter in silver threads. Inside, the annex smelled of archive dust, cooling electronics, wet leather, and the burnt coffee Lydia had forgotten beside her keyboard. Is Harlan there? Ruth asked. The question crossed the glass like a blade laid gently on a table. Harlan lowered the passbook. Lydia covered the receiver. She asked for you. His face did not change, but his shoulders locked beneath the oil-marked leather. Tell her I'm leaving. She already knows you're here. Harlan looked toward the 6-inch gap beneath the shutter, where the wet pavement showed like a narrow strip of freedom. Benton watched him without interruption. The security officer stood beside the entrance, no longer guarding the bank from Harlan, but keeping the shutter raised while he decided whether to stay. Lydia uncovered the receiver. Yes, she said. He is here. Ruth released a breath that sounded almost like disbelief. Put him on. Harlan did not move. Lydia held out the handset through the lower transaction opening. It looked too small in his hand when he finally accepted it. He lifted it halfway, stopped, then brought it to his ear. Ruth. The single word carried 17 years without explaining any of them. Why, she asked. Harlan looked down at the freshly stamped line. Edwin asked me to keep the account from disappearing. That is not what I asked. The white lights above the counter made every scar on his face visible. He could have blamed Edwin, the bank, the missing files, or the years that had made an apology harder to begin. He did none of those things. I was wrong, he said. Ruth stayed silent. I told you keeping the peace mattered more than opening the records. I made you sound like the problem, because admitting you might be right would have changed everything for me. Benton lowered his eyes to the report. Lydia turned away from the glass, giving Harlan privacy in a room designed with none. Did you find out? Ruth asked. After you left. Your mother's money had been moved into the business. Edwin paid part of it back, but he never found the courage to tell you. Harlan's voice remained steady until the last 4 words. Neither did I. Ruth did not forgive him. She did not end the call either. At 12:11 a.m., she agreed to come to the branch on Monday with identification, a certified copy of Edwin's death certificate, and the family records Lydia listed for beneficiary verification. Before hanging up, She asked Lydia to keep the passbook there. Harlan looked at the green cover in his hand. It belongs. With the record, Ruth said through the receiver. Then, after a pause, she added, and Harlan should be there when I see it. On Monday morning, Ruth Caro entered the annex carrying a narrow folder and the calm expression of someone who had spent years learning not to expect answers. The marble had been polished again, and the new bank logo glowed behind the glass, but a faint gray mark from the archive box remained on the counter beneath the task light. Harlan waited near the velvet ropes in the same oil-marked leather jacket, holding no claim form, no demand, and no expectation of forgiveness. Lydia placed the green passbook, the carbon receipt, the original beneficiary card, and the approval notice from beneficiary operations beneath the task light. Benton stood across from Ruth with the verification packet open. The identity documents match, he said. Beneficiary operations has validated the archive card, but the branch restriction remains until I release it. Harlan looked at him. You already determined that Friday. Benton kept his voice controlled. We preserved it for review, Benton said. Validation came from beneficiary operations this morning. Release authority still sits with this branch. Lydia turned the passbook to the first $1 deposit after Edwin's death, then to every Friday entry that followed. 17 years. Nearly 900 Friday deposits. Not one withdrawal. Benton looked at the approval notice, but did not touch the release control. Harlan slid Benton's corrected certification beside the notice from beneficiary operations. The archive card has been cleared. Ruth has verified her identity. Your branch hold is the only thing left, he said. Release it, or write down why you're overruling both. Ruth watched Benton without blinking. Harlan slid Benton's corrected certification beside the approval notice from beneficiary operations. The archive card has been cleared. Ruth has verified her identity. Your branch hold is the only thing left, he said. Release it, or write down why you are overruling both. The room became still. No threat filled it. No raised voice. Only two approvals, one remaining restriction, and Benton's name attached to whatever happened next. Lydia opened the release screen and rotated it toward him. Benton looked at Ruth, then at the approval notice. He entered his authorization and removed the restriction. Proceed with the beneficiary transfer, he said. Lydia entered Ruth's verified information, attached the archive card and the operations approval, then printed the beneficiary transfer confirmation. The account had never been Harlan's. The money did not go to him. Every dollar, every cent of interest, and every surviving balance transferred to Ruth Caro, exactly as Edwin's signed instruction required. Ruth opened the passbook and read the repeated entries. $1. Friday. $1. Friday. Why only one? She asked. Harlan looked at the worn cover. Enough to make the bank touch the account. Small enough that no one could say I was buying my way back. And Friday was the day Edwin always believed you might come home. Ruth closed the book. You could have found me sooner. I know. You could have told me the truth. I know. She did not forgive him with a speech. She signed the transfer form, then tore the customer copy along its perforated edge and placed it inside the back cover. On the final page, beneath Lydia's 11:57 p.m. stamp, she wrote one sentence. I received what was kept for me. Then she handed the passbook to Harlan. Keep the proof, she said. But next Friday, bring it to coffee instead of the bank. Harlan left the green passbook on the workbench in his garage, open to that final sentence. He mounted it beneath a clear sheet of glass, beside the tools he used every day. The following Friday, his motorcycle passed the bank without slowing. The $1 deposits had ended. The promise had not disappeared. It had changed into something living. If you believe in the true brotherhood and kindness of bikers, please hit the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe to our channel for more stories. This story is a fictional narrative created for entertainment, reflection, and educational purposes. Any resemblance to real people, places, or events is purely coincidental.